Hi you guys, this is Rachel Kirkland, the Modern Shaman. Thanks for being with me for another YouTube question and answer. I will say if you're new to this community, go to my website, which is themodernshaman.net, just to find ways to connect with me, kind of what I'm about, different offerings that I have in terms of sessions and tours that I'm going to be doing this year. I'm going to Austin next weekend, and then I'm going to be in Chicago, and then I'm going to be in Hawaii, and then I'm going to be in Japan and Raleigh, North Carolina. So maybe I'm missing another one. Anyways, this year has a lot of tour dates. That's all online. And also just the launching of my online teaching program and some platforms and some ways to kind of connect with you guys in a more direct teaching, accessible format. At your demand, right? Where you say, I want to learn that, boom. Which is kind of how YouTube is centered, but it's focused around y'all's questions and it's much more broad. These are like in-depth, like an hour-long video modules of like, you do this step, you do this step. It gives you handouts and practice activities and a lot more like genuine teaching curriculum. So, all that being said, if you're interested in kind of getting to know more of this community and what there is to do with it, or like kind of what to do next, like a way to connect and where to go from there, go to the website. It's themodernshaman.net. Okay, so here's the question this week. Oh, that's right, I printed it out because it was long. So she said, "Hi Rachel, I am so grateful to you for this channel because I continue to learn and grow so much through watching all of your content here. I really enjoyed our session last year, but would like to remain anonymous on the channel if you answer this question." Okay, I'm not going to share your name. Perfect. I have gone through a Kundalini awakening experience a few years ago and don't seem to find many people around me that have been through similar experiences. I went from not knowing about my psychic abilities and gifts to having them come through fully all at once. I also have progressed pretty rapidly along my spiritual path. Since throughout all of my growth and outgrowing of many people I resonate with, I still continue to resonate with you and your teachings. So that's why I thought you may be the best one to answer this. My question to you is, have you experienced a sense of being further along in your journey than others around you and find it a challenge to fit into groups with light workers and starseeds? And if so, how did you or do you cope with that? I was excited to find other spiritual people along my journey after not knowing anyone at first and being new to this on a conscious level, but each time when I do, I realize that we are in different places. I'm wondering if I'm just meant to make peace with being unique and embracing that. It has resulted in a lot of inner turmoil and disappointment through my journey. Thank you so much for answering me. Love and blessings. Beautiful. Okay. First thing I will say is when you were on this spiritual path, the best thing that you can do is to be extremely honest with yourself and then with others from that space. And oftentimes this can be really humbling if you are in a space that is set apart. And I can answer that first question of like, have I experienced a sense of being further along in my journey? Yes. And I don't say that with a sense of judgment or a sense of authority above anyone other than myself. I have just personally had that experience of feeling like of a deep knowing of my leadership, of my wisdom in perception, in the depth at which I process things that is very different from most people. And at times I can perceive that in an isolating way, and I have had many friendships or people that have that I've started conversations with or opened up to the response to me being myself, being like, you're really intense. I used to get that a lot. You're really, really intense. Or like, I always would find myself naturally moving to a space that wanted to discuss things in depth, that wanted to move into a place of wisdom and not talk about things that to me felt surface or trivial, not in a judging way, but in an observing way and in a conscious way of what I was creating and what I was contributing to in my wording. And at the beginning of my spiritual embodiment, there are phases, and when I use that word embodiment, it's because at the beginning I was very, it was still coming in, there was a lot of awareness, and even though I was in different spiritual spaces all growing up in my life, and even though my spiritual, my connection to God, my ethics, my morality, who I was and how I was living out my connection with spirit was always like number one in my life, no matter what it looked like. If I was in the Christian community, I was a missionary. If I was, if I was in any environment I was in, I was like wholeheartedly focused in that connection. If I was gonna connect with God, it was like I was up at 4 a.m. and I was on my knees, and I was going outside, and I was just like, I was very active and passionate in all times in my journey. But the embodiment of it didn't truly happen until I went through a phase of like getting comfortable with who I truly was. And I know that there was a process that I felt really almost embarrassed or humbled to say, that I felt myself needing to lead people, stand in my wisdom, share from that place. And even though that would naturally occur, if I was a teenager and I was in some sort of sports team, I was the captain. If I was I was always moving towards places of leadership, and I had a tendency to do that my whole life. Sometimes that flip-flopped on me, and people would, call me bossy, and and sometimes I would be in places where I was not the leader, and someone who was in leadership was not good at that leadership at all, and that would be like nails on the chalkboard of spirit showing me what needed to be done, how it should be done, and having experiences like that. But I remember coming into the embodiment of my spiritual path, and one of my early visions of a past life was that I was seeing myself with my current family and, extended uncles and aunts, and they were like my children or like my tribe. The life that I was seeing was of me as some sort of tribal leader, like a chief or a shaman in a native community, and people coming to me and me making decisions for similar to a king, where all of their peoples would come to them and ask them kind of problem solving questions. And I would get this vision over and over. And I shared this one time with my aunt, which I'm so blessed at her response, because she said to me, yeah, I see that in you, and yeah, I believe that's true. I believe you're the chief of our peoples. I believe you're the leader of our family. And for someone older than me, who I thought was wiser than me, to say that when I was almost embarrassed to share my vision in that role, and feeling humbled by that. I remember too when I went and I studied Michael Newton's work, if you've ever read his books. from the journey of souls, and he talks about the different kind of hierarchical colors of vibrational levels of soul achievement, so to speak, even though it doesn't really say it in this way, but just the lessons and kind of how you start to vibrate higher and higher in the celestial energies, and they take on particular colors in the color spectrum that he noted over his time in the life between lives space. And I remember seeing my color, and at the time it was this blue, this like turquoise, and it looked like sequins, and I remember thinking, oh, that's too high of a color for me. I couldn't possibly be that high in the evolutionary journey. Like this almost this humbleness that in a way was stopping me, was keeping me back from truly standing in my own voice, in my own purpose, in my own message. That holds a sense of power in it. It holds a sense of truth in it. And when I'm not standing in that, when I'm being feeble in my sense of self, this was part of the very beginning of the journey for me, to stand on my own 2 feet and realize I have freaking strong feet. And I have a level of grit and bone to me that needs to stand in the truth of what I've experienced. And I think that this of like, have I experienced myself of being further along? I would kind of combat a bit inside myself with the sense of that statement feels like it's judgmental, or it's putting people in a place that's below me. And I don't necessarily feel like it's hierarchical, but I do feel like it has to do with an extreme sense of precision of why you're here. I don't feel like spirit judges the person who is, on their 5th lifetime versus the one who's been on their 20,000th lifetime in the same way. There's a sense of understanding that you are where you are, and you cannot be anywhere other than where you are, and neither can they, and there's perfection in that. So not to act like a lamb when you're a lion. There's a sense of standing in yourself that it will continue to come up, and you will continue to feel those feelings of discomfort with it until you own who you are. I will say something here about outgrowing spiritual teachers. You said you at some point kind of resonate out. I think that's a very healthy and a very normal thing. And I even tell my clients, as people that I mentor, that that's the goal. Like, I don't want someone to become dependent on me, and your spiritual teacher should never want that. That is unhealthy. You should feel wonderful about your sense of spiritual evolution. Oftentimes, there's this weird spiritual guilt that teachers put on people, or that people put on themselves. Like, I feel bad if I no longer resonate with this person. No, honey, that's good. Otherwise, you wouldn't be growing, you wouldn't be evolving. And even us as spiritual teachers, if we are not continuing beyond the scope of what, then I would feel dull and uninspired. So it should feel that way. And I have had, clients that I had started with in sessions, and then they became people that I mentored, and then now they're just friends, and they're working in this community, and they're standing in their sense of purpose and passion and vision and living it out themselves. And maybe we'll talk from time to time about checking in with things, but for the most part, that is no longer a resonant space. They're seeking their own higher guidance in a way that feels like that's the point of why they would sit with me in the first place. So that is wonderful. And a true teacher should recognize that, right? If you're a good teacher, then you should want your students to surpass you. That is the point. That is the evolutionary journey, and every true teacher's heart. So don't ever feel bad about that. That is proof that you're doing that you're taking the teachings to heart, and they're not falling on deaf ears, they're falling on active ears, and the seeds are growing. Was it hard for me to fit into groups? Yes. It still is. I have very few friends. I'm going to be honest with you, just on a personal level. The group dynamics, I feel like, always make me stand out in some way. It's not that I don't enjoy them. I totally enjoy them, but I never feel like I'm just one in the crowd. That may just be me. It may be my own sense of self, but I always just feel like I pop out. I stand out. And I don't feel bad about that anymore. In fact, I feel very at peace with it. You know? I can't be anyone other than myself, and I'm not going to. I don't think that is a valuable contribution to any group, to fake it or to pretend. I've shared that sometimes I'm quiet in groups, and it's funny. In some of those groups that are sharing, everyone's sharing their story, I will find that Spirit says, nope, let's stay internal and let's just let them speak. And other times when I've done the opposite. So it's not a one size fits all in every group dynamic. I think that's one beautiful thing about the spiritual journey, is that as it's evolving, it's non-linear. It's always in the moment. And this is true of it's relational, right? It's our relationship with Source, with our true essence, with this source of all creation. And it is so absolutely responsive in the moment. I never know what to expect. I mean, it's like somebody can be sitting and talking to me before we start a session, and I still don't know what Spirit's going to say until they say it through me. It's like it's because it doesn't come from my brain. It doesn't come from my sense of wisdom. And this is the same in these experiences, like with the group. Or, you could compare it like with a child or a relationship, being a mother. It's like you never know what's going to happen. They come in the door one day with a skinned knee, and you're like, all right, this is where I am. I got to deal with this, and I got to be how would I handle this with this much empathy and compassion, and how do I show them, this is where Spirit's funneling the energy in now, and how do I squeeze the most out of this now? And it's very singular in that moment. It's very precise in that energy of exploring that concept, that moment with that individual and that heart, and how to be in a sense of creation space in that moment. It's the same with different groups. Every dynamic is different. And it's always a relationship with you and Spirit, and how can you be in the most alignment, and how can you flood with the most energetic essence of yourself into that moment. This is kind of where it comes from. It comes from this relationship, and then it playfully plays out in the dynamics around you. Okay, your last question. How did I cope with it? I guess I started answering that. Sometimes I cope with it in isolation. I love my alone time. I'm not kidding. It's almost hard for me because I love it so much. It's like I have so much fun with myself. It's like I have to really value those other friendships because I'm so much fun alone, that if that doesn't compare, then it's really hard to give up my alone time, because I love it so much. I enjoy it so much. I can travel alone. I can live alone. I can do activity alone, like go to movies alone, go out to dinner alone, go to places and read books alone, I am so genuinely happy in that. I'm not kidding. I mean, you can probably feel it. It's like I love it. I love my own vibrational space. Even when I'm fired up and angry, I'm powerhousing, you know what I mean? I'm punching on that punching bag, and I'm freaking Rocky Balboa. That energy is so rich and juicy. And so, it's I enjoy that. And I would say, how do I cope? I enjoy I enjoy me. And I would encourage you to do that, to enjoy it so much, so that there's not a sense of loss at all. There's a sense of absolute acceptance and thriving, and just squeezing out like I keep feeling like fruit, squeezing the orange and just like enjoying the juice of what's inside of you. I'm truly loving those aspects of you. And I think the more that I began to share like these videos, or I began to stand in like, this is what I want to do, even if it's changed, and I've let myself change. That's another thing, not to lock myself into one modality or lock myself into one marketing strategy or lock myself into one identity, but to say I'm fluid and I'm evolving and I'm changing and I'm growing and I want it to be that way, and allow myself to have a sense of like page turning life and like, I'm going to be this and then I'm going to be that, and have a sense of evolutionary acceptance of myself, as well as standing when you feel like you need to stand. I think if you are feeling singled out, there is a message and a point to that singledness. There is something unique in that. And there have been things that I have kept in my heart that I have shared with very few in this spiritual experience. You talked about your Kundalini awakening experience and feeling like not many others have had those. I've had a unique perspective because I have a lot of people as clients around the world that share their story with me, their weird story. And so I have a sense of community that maybe they don't know that, but to me, I get to hear everybody's crazy weird story, or they feel comfortable coming to me telling me their crazy weird stories that maybe they wouldn't tell anyone else. And so I know that I'm not alone in my experiences. I know that you're not alone in your experience, but you may be unique in the way that it's played out and the way that it came into fruition in your life. And I feel like there's a point to that shouldn't be negated or put aside as something unimportant or unvaluable. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I feel like the things that are sacred to you, that have contributed to making you who you truly are those things that are so deeply intimate with you and spirit. And I have some of those in my experiences too that I've shared with a few people, and sometimes it falls on concrete, like I don't feel like they're hearing me and they're getting me, and I'm like, they weren't able to go there with me. They weren't able to fully feel the depth of what I'm sharing. And I've had that experience, and I've also had experiences where people have held a beautiful space and said, wow, I've never had that experience. That is so crazy out there, but how amazing. And that's felt very healing, soothing, comforting. And I'm very selective with my intimate space with spirit, of things that, I share openly on here, but there's still a lot of spiritual experiences that I've had that I feel like are sacred to me. And I maybe at a time when spirit says, hey, it's time to share that one, then I'll share it. And it'll probably push me over a new precipice. So those are always available, but I would encourage you in your sense of like coping that you stand in who you are. You enjoy your sense of self. Enjoy who you are. Enjoy that uniqueness. Like I said, it's like squeezing the juice out of that orange. Like it is absolutely you, and there's such intimacy with spirit of things that are just yours and essence. Like just like when you die, that's going to be those things. It's like, those are those secrets, you know what I mean? They're not secrets like I'm hiding, but they're just personal. They're so deeply personal in the way that they can't be felt or experienced by anyone other than the source that gave them to you, and those in the non-physical realm that experience beyond our human experience. So those are to be cherished, and really, I feel like valuing yourself for who you are. Like, don't miss that part of it, and just be encouraged, like, that who you are has a purpose. Your set apart feeling, your unique aspects, your feeling like the groups never fit in, or feeling like you grow out of them quickly. Like, yeah, all of that. To me, I'm like, celebrate it. Like, yeah, mama, that is you. And you, to me, it's like you're a powerhouse mover. You're evolving really quickly. You have a sense of uniqueness that's gonna make you stand out, that has a sense of like, stand in who you are. You're not, if you don't fit in, then don't try to. You know, like there's such a sense of yes to all that you shared that just makes me want to applaud you and encourage you to stand in it, to stand in it, to stand in it. And you'll feel so much better when you're standing in your own skin, you know? When it fits, it fits, it fits. And even when you're in a group, you fit you. You fit your own skin. You don't have to fit the skin of that group. You see what I'm saying? You stretch it. Or you don't. But you feel good in your own skin. And I think that's just what I keep circling back around to. All right, I'm going to cut out here because this video is really freaking long. I love you. Mwah. Blessings. We'll be back here next week with another.